Hopefully everybody can find some seats as soon as possible so we can get started. All right, we are continuing our French. If we can get seated as soon as possible, because I feel like there's still some talking going on in the back, we can just get everyone seated. There's some seats up here in the front. Let me move this so people can sit. We'd like to welcome our CYC viewers who are chiming in right now online live. Congratulations, happy anniversary, 10-year anniversary for CYC. May God bless that ministry to give the gospel, access to the gospel to people all over the world. We ask that God would bless CYC and its ministry all over the world. All right, if we can please get a seat as soon as possible. That way there's some chairs over there on the side. All right, here we are, our third week in our friendship series, and we've been talking about how it is that we would accept our friends. We talked about accepting them or connecting at the mat. We talked about how accepting somebody as is, the way that they are, and we have to accept people's weaknesses. And we talked about that special story in the gospel in which we had 4 friends carry their friend on a mat to Jesus for their healing. And last week we talked about a special friendship between Jonathan and David and how Jonathan really had those true values of friendship and the way that he was a great friend. And we encouraged a lot of people. Actually, I heard something amazing. Some friends got together last week and they said, you know what? We want to be Jonathans to one another. And they got together and said, we're going to start reconnecting through prayer. And I love that. Good for you for stepping up to recommitting to become Jonathans for each other and having that special friendship, that spiritual friendship that we all so long for. Now, this week, I'm going to talk about a little bit of a little different angle. I'm going to talk about what to do when friends hurt us. What to do when friends hurt us, because it's going to happen. Newsflash, your friends are probably going to be human, okay? Even though, like people say that dogs are a man's best friend, I heard recently that now people are allowing people to marry animals in Europe. Good for them, okay? Why? Because they can't find friendships among humans. I don't blame the people. There's so many lonely people in the world. They're marrying animals, okay? Do you understand what I'm saying here? They're marrying animals because even animals for some people are more loyal than humans, okay? So we have to... This is where our world is coming from. So fix yourselves, okay? Become better Jonathans. Become better friends so your friend doesn't have to marry an animal. All right. Now, some people making friendships is effortless. They're social. They can connect with people and they bond. I want you to imagine, let's say, let's have a hypothetical story. I want you to imagine somebody came to church. They don't know anybody. Everybody has their own groups of friends. They have their own cliques. I don't know anybody. I don't know who is taken and who's not taken, who has friendships, who doesn't have friendships. I want you to imagine the things that contemplate when you go to a new school or a new job or a new church. And you have all these things that you're contemplating, trying to reflect on, how am I going to fit? And I want you to imagine the things that you would want to do in order to build those friendships, okay? I want you to think about like you going, building a bond, building a friendship, connecting with somebody. All of a sudden, you found somebody that opened their heart to you. You begin to bond. You begin to spend more time together. You open your heart. You share each other's secrets. And then one day, you find that your friendship, your best friend who you've given yourself over to, all of a sudden is now flirting with the guy that you like, or is, doing something, has betrayed you in some different way, where you feel all of a sudden, somebody I've totally given myself to, and we have this bond, has betrayed me. Isn't that painful? It really is sad when all of a sudden people feel like, in 1 second, people feel betrayed. You see, friendship always has some type of promise in it. there's an unspoken promise that when you enter into a friendship and you connect and you open up your hearts and you go deeper, there is an unspoken promise to one another that we're going to remain faithful and loyal friends. And all of a sudden, this person has betrayed you, and all of a sudden they've broken your heart. You feel like, how can I ever be this person's friend again? They've let me down. They've betrayed me. God knows, maybe they spread a secret about me or they released one of my secrets. It's extremely painful. It's extremely painful to have to deal with the betrayal of a friend. You see, when a promise gets broken, so does someone's heart. And God created human beings in His image so they can be friends. We talked about this. But what human beings added as an invention is revenge and getting revenge. And we find people start to get revenge on one another. I want you to hear a story about a person named Lamech in the Bible. In the book of Genesis, one of the first chapters of the Bible is a person named Lamech. This person took revenge to an ultimate extreme. He kills a man for wounding him, and he says he is going to seek revenge, pay attention, 77 times over against anyone who hurts him. So in the very first chapters of the Bible, the result of the fall of Adam is that now people are saying, I'm going to seek revenge. How many times? Pay attention to the number. 77 times. And so what the Bible calls is the law of Lamech. His name is Lamech. The law of Lamech is if somebody hurts me, I'm going to do what? I'm going to hurt them back. This is the law of Lamech. And this is something that we're all going to have to deal with at some point. Like I said, every single one of your friends, I don't care how perfect they are, they will let you down because they're human. They're going to slip the tongue. They're going to say something that offends you. Maybe they're going to be in a bad mood one day and prefer somebody else over you and try to make you feel jealous and do the different things in the games that we like to play as friends. Imagine one of the most heartbreaking statements that God said in the Bible. In Genesis 6, He says, "The Lord was grieved that He had made man on the earth, and His heart was filled with pain." Imagine God regretted creating man because of what they were doing to one another, because of the way that they were hurting each other. And here we see it in the story of Lamech, and he says, I'm going to get revenge up to 77 times over what this person has done to me. But then God created something different in order for man to be able to reconcile. He created something called forgiveness. And what I want to talk to you guys about this morning is how to forgive our friendships. How to forgive our friendships. It's so hard, and you might be holding a grudge from second grade, right? You might be holding a grudge because some kid did something to you on a playground 20 years ago. This is how we as humans are. And so God created something new, and there was never a need for it in the past, but He created something called forgiveness. Forgiveness is the only force strong enough to heal relationships by hatred and betrayal. Once again, forgiveness is the only force strong enough to heal relationships. I want you to think, do you have any broken friendships or broken relationships? The only way you can heal a friendship, don't try to come up with some strategy or some 3-point process of how we're going, it's forgiveness. Forgiveness is the only force that can do it. We're going to read here in Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 to 35. Follow along with me. It says, Then Peter came to him, the Lord, and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 77 times. Therefore the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and that payment be made. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him the debt. But that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, "Pay me what you owe." So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you all." And he would not, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what had been done, they were very grieved and came and told their master all that had been done. Then his master, after he had called him, said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you?" And his master was angry and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. So my heavenly Father also will do to you if each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses. Most likely, Peter was expecting Jesus to say, "Come on, Peter, nobody expects anyone to have to forgive that many times." Back in the days, the rabbis used to teach that if you forgive up to 3 times, you are required to forgive up to 3 different times. And so Peter steps it up a little bit. He says, "Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother? Up to 7 times?" You see, Peter's trying to say, "Lord, because I know you and I know your nature, and I know your character, and I know how your heart is, I'm not going to go along with the 3 thing. Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother when he sins against me? 7 times?" I think Peter was expecting Jesus to say, 7 times? What are you, Jesus himself? No, let it go. It's okay. 3 times is enough. You don't need to overdo things. But this isn't what Jesus said. You see, it's not just anyone that's hurt Peter, but Peter said, "What shall I do when my brother offends me?" You see, it wasn't just a random person who keeps on hurting me. This is a brother. This is a deep friendship, a close relationship. How often and how hard, how much should I forgive this person? How can he keep setting himself up for heartbreak? How many of you have done this before? You say, like, am I going to keep going back to them for them to hurt me? How many of you have thought that thought before? Where you said, like, I can forgive them once, twice, 3 times, but sooner or later, I got to stop getting hurt by this person, so I need to stop. But Jesus tells us very clearly exactly his expectation. Why should I forgive? What if the other person doesn't deserve it? How many of you have thought that thought before? Why should I forgive them? They don't deserve it. They did something so dirty, so shameful. They did something that they know was so evil. No, they don't deserve it. I want you to process your thoughts. And I want you to think how many times you said, "Come on, I can only go so far. I'm only human. I'm only human," right? And so we give ourselves the limitation of humanity. We give ourselves the limitation to say, "I'm only human." But when your friend sins against you, we don't expect them to be human. I want us to get into this and understand what it is that Jesus is doing. You see, forgiveness is very risky. Forgiving a friend that's hurt you is not an easy thing to do. So what does Jesus say? Jesus says, "I tell you not 7 times, but what? 77 times. Why 77? You see, what God was doing is he was reversing the law of Lamech. Lamech says, "I am going to get revenge on my brother up to 77 times. I'm going to keep on getting revenge to get my payback from what they've done." But Jesus is reversing it. Is he saying, okay, when you get to the 78th time, you're free? No. What he's doing is he's saying, I want you to reverse this mentality of Lamech. This is a sinful mentality. This is a mentality of a result of the fall of Adam, right? This is not something that we are aspiring to. If Lamech is going to get revenge 77 times, I want you to forgive 70 times 7. He's saying, I want to reverse this law of Lamech. There are 2 ways to live with hurt. There's the way of vengeance and getting revenge, and then there's the way of forgiveness? What's the better choice? The way of forgiveness is nice as we're sitting here and we have icons and we just took communion. It's nice on paper. But when it actually happens to you and you're in a situation where it's almost impossible to forgive, the number one option actually looks even better. You see, the first way, the way of vengeance leads to death. The second one leads to life. You see, what Jesus is trying to say is, if you're going to try to keep track of how many times you forgive, you're going to go crazy. He says, I don't want you to keep track. Just keep forgiving. Like, are you going to get to 490 times and say, all right, it's been 490 times, you're on your 490th time, once you get to 491, you're a dead man. And that's not what he's saying. He's saying, look, just don't lose count. Or don't keep count. Just keep on forgiving and forgiving and forgiving and forgiving. You're saying, Abuna, what you're asking could not be what Jesus expected. We're going to look at what that means. You see, forgiveness has to be a way of life. Your forgiveness has to be a way of life. It's not something you do once, you get the strength to do it a second time. I want to ask you today, how many times would you say you've seen that forgiveness just becomes your response? You know that somebody hurt you, the thing that I'm supposed to do as a Christian is that I forgive. There's no contemplation. There's no like, should I really forgive them? No. You have to forgive them. It's a way of life. It's something that you train yourself to always do. I want us to get into this and try to understand. See, when Jesus tells the story, he grabs onto the largest number in the language and he pluralizes it. You know what he says? He says, when he tells the story, he says, a man who owes 10,000 talents. I want you to imagine if I say, imagine somebody who owed $500 billion, right? Jesus is choosing the largest amount of number that he could think in his head. He says, I want you to imagine a servant who owes $500 billion. It's a number that is not even fathomable. Like none of us could ever think of what that number is. Even owing $500 billion. And so when Jesus gives the story, he's setting it up for us to understand what real forgiveness is. There is a servant who owes his master 10,000 talents. It's like saying zillions in English. You see, God wanted to appreciate and make very clear the size of the debt. There's no possibility that this person can ever pay back the money. I want you to imagine you have a company, okay? You have a bunch of board members of this big company, and some VP comes and he knows that he has embezzled money, he's stolen money, he's done something of some number that's cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. And I want you to imagine they come into the board meeting, they say, so-and-so stand up. You are the reason why our company has lost hundreds of millions of dollars. We need you to pay it back. Otherwise, we're going to send you to jail, and your wife and your children are going to be our slaves and their children's children until the end of times. You are going to be our slaves forever. I want you to understand the mentality of somebody who all of a sudden feels like there's nothing I can do. Imagine how he was feeling. This is going to be bloody. This is terrible. I want you to imagine the employee's fear and humiliation. It's all over. I can't fake anymore. Could you imagine if you came into your university, college students, and they said, one person has stolen whatever, has done something to ruin this university, and they stand you up in front of all the kids of your university and say, you owe $100 million. And you say, what? Like, what would the fear be that comes to your mind? Because this is the real situation, and why Jesus is building up the story in this way is because you and I can relate before God. You and I can relate before God. I owe God $100 billion. I owe him zillions and zillions and zillions because of the sins that I continuously never stop committing. And so he's trying to paint this picture of owing an unfathomable debt. What does the sentence say in the scripture? Sell everything he owns, sell him into slavery, and his wife and children, and his children's children, until the unpayable debt is paid. Case closed, take him away. Next item of business, you owe, you pay. The rule is, if you owe the money, who pays? You pay. Is that fair? Is that fair for everybody? Everybody nod your head if you think it's fair that if you owe the money, you pay. All right. You see, making debtors pay was serious business. I want you to imagine this scene. It's miserable. And all of a sudden, the guy comes begging to the CEO of the company. And he says, he gets on the floor and he says, I can't, let me do anything. Maybe can you just let this go? Can you please? And all the other board members are sitting there saying, come on, he's not going to fall for this line. He's not going to fall for the guy that's going to say, please, I made a mistake. Just let it go and forgive me. You would say, this guy's crazy. He lost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. You would imagine the CEO to be like, get this guy out of my office. And so they're saying, come on, is he really going to fall for this? I want you to imagine the CEO comes and says, okay, fine. I'll let it go. You're set free. Does this story even sound like it could ever happen? I want you to imagine this is a CEO sitting in a big boardroom. Somebody has lost hundreds of millions of dollars. He says, fine, we'll let it go. But didn't Jesus do that to us? Doesn't Jesus look to you and me and say, okay, fine, let it go? You're saying, no. There's got to be more to the story. He didn't just let him go. Isn't that what you do every time you come to God? You come and you say, Lord, I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid. I know I made this mistake. I can't forgive myself. I don't know what to do. And he says, okay, fine. Let him go. And the people in the boardroom are saying, are you kidding me? Like what? Who's going to pay this? Who is going to pay the cost of this lost money? Right? The company lost $100 million. We can't just say, let's continue business. And now that we're, $500 million in the hole, it's no big deal. No. Somebody has to pay. Somebody has to pay. Who's going to end up paying? The company. The company is going to end up paying. Somebody is going to have to come and say, I will pay the fee. You see, this is what I want us to understand. Forgiveness doesn't come cheap. Forgiveness is not something I'm telling you, just do it. Come on, just let go of the drama, let go of the people's offenses, just let it go. It didn't come cheap. It came at the price of Christ on the cross. God himself took flesh like you and me, lived 30 years on this planet, 33 years, and then was crucified in his last days. To pay, somebody has to pay. This is the new motto for Jesus. You owe, I'll pay. You owe the money, I'll pay. How many of us do that with our friendships? You made a mistake. It caused a lot of shame. It caused a lot of hurt. I can't let it go. You owe me something. I'll pay. It seems like none of us can even conceive that type of thinking. But we do it every day as we approach God. I want to tell you what forgiveness is not. Let's look at what forgiveness is not. First, forgiving is not the same thing as excusing, because I don't want us to misunderstand what we mean by forgiving. You see, forgiveness is what is required when there's no good explanation for what they did. Forgiveness does not mean tolerating bad behavior. Forgiveness does not mean it's okay if you are a jerk and you continue to steal our money and you do all these things. That's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not excusing. And I want you to understand that about forgiveness. There are some things that are excusable, right? We excuse the way women drive on the freeway. We understand. We just excuse it. I have the microphone and I have the clicker and I'll zap you if you look at me funny. Okay. We excuse things that are just common. We excuse the kids that drop things. We don't forgive them for spilling milk. We excuse it. We excuse it. But something that there's no explanation as to why they do it, we have to forgive. When there's no explanation, that's when forgiveness is required. But not when you need to excuse it. All right. This is a big one. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not forgetting. You say, what do you mean? It doesn't mean that one day the CEO of the company is going to forget that they owed $500 million, right? Do you think one day the CEO is just going to come into work and be like, okay, where's my cup of coffee? Let's get this day on the road. You owe $500 million, okay? It is a big deal. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and I want to explain what that means. Because all that forgetting means that you just have a really bad memory. Forgetting means that our past sins become irrelevant to his dealings with us. When St. Paul says, forgetting those things which are behind, I press on towards the goal. Do you think St. Paul ever forgot that he persecuted Christians and threw them in jail? Do you think there was a night that he put his head on the pillow and said, thank God everything's just fresh and nice and new? I don't think there was a day that passed by that he didn't imagine him dragging Christians because they believe in Jesus and throwing them in jail, kicking them, beating them, doing God knows what he's doing. There's no way he forgets. But what happens is that when we forget, we are saying, I will no longer deal with you based on your offense. Because you betrayed me last time, I didn't forget that you betrayed me. I know you betrayed me. But I'm not going to deal with you as one who has betrayed me. Does that make sense? I'm going to clarify. I am not going to deal with you based on your offense. That's forgiveness. That is forgiveness. Forgetting means that our past sins become irrelevant to his dealing with us. And it's what is needed when you can't forget. So somebody has offended me and hurt me, and I can't forget it. That's when forgiveness kicks in. That's when you say, you owe, I'll pay. I'm not going to pretend like this never happened. And I think we all understand the magnitude of how sometimes the pain can be when somebody has hurt me. But we're saying is, you owe what? I'll pay. Forgiveness is not the same thing as reconciling, making peace. Forgiveness is not that. Forgiveness takes place within the heart of one human being and can be granted even if the other person does not ask for it or deserve it. Once again, forgiveness takes place within the heart of one human being and can be granted even if the other person does not ask for it or deserve it. What does that mean? The person has caused a mistake against you, an offense, has done something to hurt you. They don't need to come say sorry for you to forgive. But that doesn't mean that you have to rebuild trust. Forgiveness is one thing, reconciling is another. You've sinned against me. You don't even apologize. You don't even care about your mistake. You didn't even change what you're doing. Forgiveness is a me thing. It's not an us thing. Is that clear? Forgiveness is a me thing. It's not an us thing. That when somebody offends me, I forgive because I forgive this way. I forgive. This is between me and God. It does not mean reconciling. We said reconciling requires the rebuilding of trust, and that means good faith on the part of both parties. People, both sides are saying, we're going to get along and we're going to try to change this. That may not be the case in every time somebody sins against you. How many of you have forgiven when the person doesn't deserve it? When have you forgiven when you didn't ask? When the other person didn't ask? Have you ever dealt with somebody that you have sinned against? You've sinned against them. And you expect that they hate your guts, that they want to have nothing to do with you. Every time they look at you, they're thinking all kinds of evil thoughts towards you. And all of a sudden, you're expecting them to be a monster. And they deal with you with the same love and the same kindness. They may not be your best friend again, but they've let it go. They've let it go. And I want us to understand this deeper. You see, we're going to talk about what forgiveness is. So we said, those are the things that forgiveness is not. The first stage of forgiveness is the decision not to try to inflict a reciprocal amount of pain on everyone who has caused hurt. What does that mean? The first stage is letting go of the revenge. when I forgive you, I give up the right to hurt you back. Is that a hard thing to do? You are now in debt. The person has sinned against you. You are in debt. You are the one that has the debt. What it's saying is, it's not trying to, again, seek pain or revenge. When we forgive, we let go of revenge, but it doesn't mean that we let go of justice. What does justice mean? Justice still has to be honored. How many of you guys saw that one case where the police officer shot a man's brother, and in court they went and they hugged each other in court and he forgave her? She's still going to jail, right? She still has to go to jail. She killed somebody. She's still going to jail. I forgive you and I've let go of the hurt. But it doesn't mean if somebody kidnaps my child, okay, I can forgive them, but justice still needs to be served. Do we understand that? That's a really important part of forgiveness. It doesn't mean that we forgo justice. The same thing happens with our sin. I lived in Kenya, and HIV was spreading everywhere. HIV was spreading like wildfire. And so, especially in the villages where just, And I remember one of the young people came to me and said, Abuna, I sinned, and I got HIV. Will God ever forgive me? I said, God forgives you, but you still have HIV. Like, God forgives you, you're forgiven. You can be at peace with God, but you have HIV. There's nothing I can do about that. The justice has been served with the sin. We have to understand that sometimes there's going to be justice in regards to our sin. The next stage of forgiveness involves a new way of seeing and feeling. When we forgive each other, we do not ignore their hurts, but we see beyond them. How many times when you look at the person who hurts you, the only thing you see is the hurt? Every time I see this person, all I can think about is that dirty scoundrel hurt me. That person did this to me. No. When you start to recognize whether you have forgiveness in your heart, it's whether you are able to see beyond the hurt. When we hold fast to forgiveness towards another person, you believe only bad things about them. You can't believe only bad things about them. There is nobody that is all bad. I remember somebody had hurt me deeply, and every time I heard something about them good, I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to accept that there could be anything good about this person because they hurt me personally. But in reality, there is nobody that is all bad. Even if they hurt me, it doesn't mean that they're not a good parent, they're not a good spouse, they're not a good employee. Nobody is all bad. And this is so important. How many of you, when somebody has hurt you, you can't imagine that anything is good about them? You don't want to even hear anything is good about them. You want to know that that person is suffering because they hurt me. But to be able to see them in a new way and saying, I want to see good for you. I want to see good things happen to you. When we forgive each other, we do not ignore the hurts, but we see beyond them. Next thing, the third stage of forgiving. Sorry, something happened with my. The third stage of forgiving is the one that shows you have begun to make some real progress, is when you find yourself wishing the other person well. Isn't that a hard one? Imagine to want to see that they are doing okay. They hurt you and they did whatever they did to you, but you found, like you hope that, they would still grow, and they've been hoping for this job and they get the job. Are you happy for them when they get the job? You know that we were best friends and this person hurt you. And you know that they're in desperate need of this new job. And all of a sudden you hope that they get this new job. Yes, I'm still hurt, but I hope that they get the new job. This is something that matures us. God commands us to forgive because it's the best way to live. God commands forgiving because to refuse to forgive means I allow the one who hurts me to keep me chained in a prison of bitterness and resentment. The reason why you forgive is not for them. Chances are it's because of yourself. There's nothing worse than somebody that's holding on to resentment and bitterness in their heart forever. And you're like, the person moved to another state, got married, they have kids, their grandparents, it's over. And the only person that is in prison is themselves. I'm keeping myself in this prison because I will not let go of the bitterness. Forgiveness is for yourself. When you let go of the hurt that the person has done for you, you do it to set yourself free. When the miracle of forgiveness takes place, it leads to the healing of a broken relationship. When the miracle of forgiveness takes place, it leads to the healing of a broken friendship. Let's listen to 2 Corinthians 5:18. Now all things are of God, who has reconciled us to himself through Jesus Christ and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, that God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, not imputing their trespasses to them, and has committed to us the word of reconciliation. You were given the ministry of reconciliation. It's a service. If you accept God's forgiveness, then you have to be in the ministry of reconciliation. Only if you accept God's forgiveness. That's so important. Do you want God to forgive you? Then you need to be in this ministry, in the service of reconciling with one another. As a general rule, where there is hurt, I am both the victim and the agent of wrongdoing. Do you guys understand this? Nobody is completely guilty 100%. Oftentimes, you might even have 1% of the reason. 1%. I'm giving you 1%. But there could be a chance where 1% you caused this person to sin against you. We're going to be finishing up here. It is no longer for their spiritual well-being. Hold on. Because reconciliation is the healing of our deepest longing, it is never too late to seek it. Do you understand that? There has not been too much time that has gone by where I can't seek healing. No, you can do it. And it's important that you understand every time you say, forgive us our debts, what? We say, as we forgive our debtors. Last point. When you long, the reason why we forgive is because we long for people's spiritual well-being. You want people to be able to move on in Christ. If you want to know if you've really forgiven something, you want this person to know God. Person has sinned against you and injured you and done something. You want them to know God in a deeper way. I want you, if any of you guys are going to gather together with your friends, I promise that at once every series I'll prepare some questions in case you want to get together, listen to a sermon, and have spiritual discussions. Some of the community groups want to get together still with each other. Maybe you can take a picture of these questions so that you can share them with some of your friendships, or maybe there's somebody that you want to talk to about these points. Maybe you haven't been able to forgive. Here's some questions. You can take a picture so that you can be able to reflect on and examine yourself as to whether you are willing to forgive. Forgiveness is not cheap. It came at a very expensive price by Christ. And so we also have to ask God for his strength that we might forgive others. And glory be to God forever. Amen. Let's stand up.